Carrying a lightweight .44 Magnum feels like a miracle, until the violent recoil locks the cylinder and leaves you defenseless. We are told that carrying a heavy handgun in bear country is a rookie mistake, so we buy ultra-light scandium frames or compact 5-shot cylinders to save our backs. Or, we buy into the Hollywood nostalgia of beautiful blued steel. But the range does not care about marketing or movies. When you pack Magnum power into a frame that is too light to handle it, or rely on a high-maintenance safe queen in the damp woods, you are setting yourself up for disaster. Today, we are exposing 3.44 Magnums that look perfect on paper, but fail miserably when the trigger is pulled. Imagine strapping a revolver to your chest that feels as light as a polymer 9mm, only to realize that pulling the trigger feels like catching a baseball bat with your bare palm. That is the exact paradox of the Smith Wesson Model 329 PD. On paper, it solves the oldest problem in the backcountry, weight fatigue. By combining a space-age scandium alloy frame with an incredibly light titanium cylinder, Smith & Wesson managed to shave the total weight down to just over 26 ounces. If you are hiking 20 miles through grizzly country, that feels like a miracle. But the moment you actually have to use it, the fantasy evaporates. Without the mass of a traditional steel frame to absorb the violent expansion of a .44 Magnum cartridge, the recoil energy is transferred directly into your wrist. In my testing, firing full house 240 grain loads felt less like shooting a gun and more like a physical assault. This violent snap creates a dangerous mechanical failure known as crimp jump. The recoil is so severe that it acts like a slide hammer, pulling the bullets forward out of their brass casings. Once those bullets slip forward, they lock up the cylinder, turning your expensive defensive tool into a paperweight. Additionally, the titanium cylinder requires delicate care. If you use standard wire brushes or harsh copper solvents to clean the carbon buildup, you will strip the protective coating right off the metal, permanently ruining the cylinder. When you compare the 329 PD to a standard stainless steel Model 629, the trade-offs become clear. The steel 629 weighs over 40 ounces, which is a pain to carry but actually manageable to shoot. In a high-stress encounter, you need controllable follow-up shots, not a gun that makes you flinch before you even pull the trigger. With a street price hovering between $1,250 and $1,400, shooters in 2026 are realizing they do not want to pay a premium for a gun they dread shooting at the range. Next on the chopping block is a gun that carries more cultural weight than almost any other firearm in history, the Smith & Wesson Model 29 Classic. This is the Hollywood legend, the very gun that Clint Eastwood made famous in 1971, cementing the .44 Magnum as a pop culture icon. When you hold one, the deep, high, gloss-blued finish looks absolutely stunning under range lights. But there is a massive gulf between a display piece and a practical tool, and in 2026, shooters are realizing this classic design is severely out of step with modern needs. The trouble starts the moment you take it out of the presentation case. That beautiful blued steel is incredibly high maintenance. If you carry this gun in the damp woods or get sweat on the frame during a summer hike, it will rust overnight if you do not immediately wipe it down with oil. The gorgeous wooden target grips look period correct, but they offer absolutely zero recoil absorption. Firing full, power-hunting loads with these grips feels like letting off a firecracker inside a wooden glove. Furthermore, the Model 29 is stuck in the past mechanically. It features the controversial internal safety lock above the cylinder release, which many purists hate because it introduces an unnecessary point of failure. If you want to mount a modern red dot sight, you cannot just screw it on. You either have to pay a gunsmith to permanently drill and tap the frame, or ruin the lines of the gun with a bulky aftermarket adapter. When you compare it to a modern stainless steel alternative like the Ruger Red Hawk, the practical choice is obvious. The Red Hawk handles weather, mounts optics easily, and actually absorbs recoil. With a street price running between $1,150 and $1,300, the Model 29 Classic has transitioned from a working gun to an expensive safe queen. Modern buyers simply do not want to spend over $1,000 on a museum piece when they need a tool that can survive the elements. If you walk into a gun shop looking for a bare defense gun that will not break the bank or drag your pants down, the Taurus Tracker 44 looks like an absolute steal. It promises the security of a .44 Magnum in a package that is actually comfortable to carry all day on a chest rig. By shrinking the frame down to a medium size and dropping the cylinder capacity from the standard 6 rounds to just 5, Taurus created a revolver that is remarkably easy on your back during long hikes. But the moment you drop the hammer on a live round, the compromise becomes painfully obvious. That compact frame simply does not have the physical mass required to absorb the violent energy of a .44 Magnum cartridge. Taurus tried to offset this by adding factory porting to the barrel, but in my testing, those ports do little more than create a deafening blast and direct dirty gas upward. The recoil impulse is sharp, stinging, and drives straight back into the web of your hand. Making matters worse is the trigger. The double action pull is heavy, gritty, and unpolished, making precise shot placement under stress incredibly difficult. Then there are the rubber grips. While they feel soft and comfortable in a dry gun store, they are a liability in the field. The sticky rubber texture constantly snags on cover garments, collects trail dust like a magnet, and begins to degrade and turn gummy if it comes into contact with standard aerosol cleaning solvents. When you compare the Tracker to its larger sibling, the Taurus Raging Hunter, or a Ruger Redhawk, the difference in shootability is night and day. The Raging Hunter is significantly heavier, but it actually allows you to fire a second shot without losing your grip. With a street price running between $550 and $650, the Tracker 44 is cheap, but budget-conscious shooters in 2026 are realizing that saving a few $100s is not worth carrying a gun that fails to inspire confidence when a predator is charging down the trail. If you want a gun that feels like it was forged in the fires of Mount Doom and could easily double as a club if you run out of ammunition, the Ruger Super Blackhawk is the undisputed heavyweight champion. Ruger built this single-action legend to handle the absolute hottest .44 Magnum handloads without shaking itself loose. With its massive solid steel frame and a long 7.5-inch barrel, it is a masterpiece of traditional engineering. But while it excels as a dedicated hunting handgun from a tree stand, carrying it as a defensive tool in 2026 is a recipe for frustration. The first issue is the sheer physical footprint. Trying to draw a heavy, long-barreled revolver from a chest rig while scrambling through thick brush or sitting in a vehicle is incredibly awkward. But the real wake-up call happens at the range. The Super Blackhawk features a classic plow handle grip and a square back dragoon-style trigger guard. Under heavy recoil, that plow handle is designed to let the gun roll upward in your hand to absorb the shock. While that saves your wrist, it completely destroys your sight picture, making fast follow-up shots nearly impossible. To make matters worse, that square, back trigger guard has a nasty habit of slamming directly into your middle finger, leaving you bruised after just a cylinder of full power loads. Then there is the mechanical reality of the single-action design. In a high-stress wilderness encounter where a predator is closing the distance at 30 miles per hour, you do not have the luxury of manually cocking the hammer before every single pull of the trigger. If you somehow need to reload, you have to open a loading gate and eject each spent casing one by one. When you compare the Super Blackhawk to a modern double-action revolver like the Ruger Redhawk, the tactical disadvantage is clear. The Redhawk gives you rapid double-action fire and fast swing, out-cylinder reloads. With a street price running between $850 and $950, the Super Blackhawk is an overbuilt tank, but modern shooters are realizing that cowboy aesthetics are a poor substitute for speed and capacity when life is on the line. If you think carrying a massive hunting revolver is tough, you might be tempted to swing to the opposite extreme. A custom, shop snub-nose. That brings us to the Smith Wesson Model 629 Performance Center snub-nose. On the surface, this double-action, single-action wheel gun looks like the ultimate compromise. It is designed to pack the devastating punch of a .44 Magnum into a package you can actually carry concealed. With its unfluted 6-round cylinder, custom wood slab grips, and a stubby barrel measuring just 2.625 inches, it looks absolutely stunning. But the range reveals a very different story. The primary issue is that short barrel. A .44 Magnum cartridge requires barrel length to burn its slow-burning powder. With only 2.625 inches of runway, a massive amount of that powder burns outside the barrel. In my testing, this created a blinding fireball and a concussive blast that felt like a flashbang going off in front of my face. You are essentially trading away the velocity that makes the cartridge lethal, reducing its performance to near .44 special levels, while still enduring the full recoil of a Magnum. Speaking of recoil, those gorgeous wood slab grips offer zero forgiveness. Firing 240-grain Federal American Eagle rounds through this 39.6-ounce gun drives the metal backstrap straight into your palm. During a test of 200 rounds, the gun experienced zero mechanical malfunctions, but the physical toll on the shooter was immense. When you compare it to a direct competitor, like the Ruger Super Redhawk Alaskan, the Smith & Wesson falls short as a practical tool. The Alaskan is slightly heavier and comes with cushioned rubber grips that actually absorb shock, making it far more controllable. Furthermore, finding a comfortable inside the waistband holster for a wide, heavy end-frame revolver is incredibly difficult. With a manufacturer's suggested retail price of $1,300 and a street price hovering around $1,200, buyers in 2026 are passing on this custom snub-nose. They are realizing it is too painful to practice with, too loud to shoot without double ear protection, and simply too compromised for real-world defense. If you are hunting for a bargain in the big bore market, The Charter Arms Target Bulldog .44 might catch your eye. It promises the hard-hitting authority of a .44 caliber in a lightweight, packable frame without the premium price tag of the major brands. With a 4-inch barrel, adjustable target sights, and a 5-round capacity, it looks like a sensible kit gun for the trail. But this budget-friendly option quickly reveals why cutting corners on a big-bore revolver is a dangerous game. The primary issue is the build quality. To keep the weight down to a mere 22 ounces, Charter Arms uses a lightweight frame that simply cannot withstand the long-term abuse of heavy .44 pressures. In my testing, after just 300 rounds of standard target ammunition, the cylinder timing began to slip, and the crane developed noticeable play. The double-action trigger pull is gritty and heavy, measuring over 12 pounds, which makes precise shot placement incredibly difficult when your hands are shaking from recoil. And that recoil is downright unpleasant. Without the mass of a heavy steel frame to anchor the gun, the muzzle flip is violent, driving the thin grip panel directly into the web of your hand. It is the kind of gun that makes you flinch after a single cylinder, destroying any chance of building good shooting habits. When you compare the Target Bulldog to a competitor like the Ruger GP100 chambered in the same caliber, the difference in engineering is staggering. The Ruger weighs significantly more, but it features a robust triple locking cylinder and a frame built to handle a lifetime of heavy use. With a manufacturer's suggested retail price of $480 and a street price hovering around $420, the Charter Arms seems cheap, but buyers in 2026 are steering clear. They realize that a budget revolver that shakes itself loose after a few range trips is no bargain when you need to defend your life. If you want the legendary, indestructible strength of a Ruger frame but dread the thought of a long barrel scraping against your leg on the trail, the Ruger Redhawk 2.5-inch snub-nose seems like the ultimate answer. It promises to pack the brute force of the .44 Magnum into a compact, packable package that you can carry on your hip all day. But in the field, this stubby powerhouse reveals a massive identity crisis that has modern shooters leaving it on the shelves. The first issue is the sheer weight. Even with the barrel chopped down to just 2.5 inches, this gun is made of solid, heavy-duty stainless steel. It weighs nearly 44 ounces empty. That means you are carrying the weight of a full-size service pistol, but without any of the ballistic benefits of a longer barrel. When you fire a full power cartridge, a massive amount of the gunpowder burns outside the short barrel, creating a blinding flash and a concussive blast that will disorient you in a dark forest. You are essentially paying the price in heavy recoil and noise, but losing the velocity that makes the .40-4 Magnum a reliable stopper. Furthermore, the Redhawk features a unique single spring mechanism that controls both the hammer and the trigger return. While this design is incredibly durable, it results in a heavy, stacking double-action trigger pull. In a high-stress defensive situation, trying to pull a 12-pound trigger while your hands are shaking is a recipe for a missed shot. The factory wood grips look beautiful, but they offer no cushioning, driving the metal backstrap directly into your palm with every shot. When you compare it to the Ruger Super Redhawk Alaskan, the standard Redhawk snub falls short. The Alaskan features a peg-style grip frame that allows you to mount cushioned rubber grips to absorb the shock, and it has a much smoother trigger pull. With a street price hovering around $1,150, buyers in 2026 are realizing that if they have to carry nearly 3 pounds of steel, they might as well buy a gun with a longer barrel that actually gets the job done. Few names in the revolver world carry the prestige of the Colt snake guns, and when the legendary Colt Anaconda was reintroduced, big bore enthusiasts lost their minds. It promised the ultimate blend of Python-style elegance and .44 Magnum power. But as the initial nostalgia fades in 2026, shooters are realizing that this massive double-action, single-action wheel gun is more of a status symbol than a practical tool for the modern woodsman. The first thing you notice when you pick up the 6-inch barrel model is the sheer, uncompromising mass. Weighing in at a hefty 53 ounces empty, this stainless steel beast feels less like a sidearm and more like a boat anchor. Carrying this 11.5-inch long gun on a chest rig during a 12-mile hike through bear country is an exercise in physical endurance. On the range, that weight is a double-edged sword. While it does an excellent job of soaking up the recoil of heavy 240-grain Federal Fusion rounds, the handling is sluggish. In my testing, after running 1,000 rounds through the 6-round cylinder, the action remained incredibly smooth thanks to Colt's updated linear leaf spring design. However, the double-action trigger pull has a distinct stacking feel right before it breaks, which can throw off your accuracy when you need to make a rapid, instinctive shot. When you compare the Anaconda to a Smith Wesson Model 629, the practical differences become glaring. The Smith & Wesson is lighter, has a more predictable trigger break, and boasts a massive aftermarket for holsters and accessories. The Anaconda, by contrast, has very limited holster compatibility due to its oversized frame. Then there is the financial reality. With a manufacturer-suggested retail price of $1,499 and a street price rarely dropping below $1,350, you are paying a massive premium for the Colt name. Modern buyers are looking at the price tag, looking at the weight, and deciding that a Ruger or a Smith & Wesson gets the job done just as well for hundreds of dollars less, leaving the Anaconda to gather dust in the display case. Holding a classic single-action revolver with a rich traditional finish feels like stepping directly onto an Old West movie set. The Ruger Vaquero was built to capture that exact cowboy nostalgia, blending vintage styling with Ruger's legendary, overbuilt steel construction. But when you chamber a traditional Western-style revolver in a cartridge as punishing as the .44 Magnum, the romantic appeal quickly collides with a painful, impractical reality. The primary frustration with the Vaquero lies in its traditional sighting system. Unlike modern hunting revolvers, the Vaquero features fixed, low-profile iron sights, consisting of a simple blade front and a notch cut directly into the top strap. Because .44 Magnum ammunition varies wildly in bullet weight and velocity, your point of impact shifts dramatically depending on the load you choose. Without adjustable sights, you cannot tune the gun to your preferred ammunition. You are left guessing where your shots will land, which is unacceptable when target placement is a matter of survival. Handling the gun under heavy recoil is another major hurdle. The smooth, polished grip panels look stunning, but they offer zero texture for your hands to hold on to. When you fire a full, power Magnum round, the plow-shaped grip is designed to let the gun roll violently upward in your palm to dissipate energy. While this saves your wrist, it completely destroys your sight picture. You must manually cock the hammer and reposition your hand for every single shot, making rapid follow-up shots nearly impossible during a sudden animal charge. When you compare the Vaquero to a modern double-action alternative like the Ruger Red Hawk, the practical disadvantages are glaring. The Red Hawk offers adjustable sights, a swing-out cylinder for quick reloading, and the speed of a double-action trigger. With a street price hovering around $950, shooters in 2026 are leaving the Vaquero on the shelves. They are realizing that while it is a beautiful piece of history for casual range days, it is far too compromised to trust as a primary defensive tool in the backcountry. The search for the perfect mid-sized trail gun often leads shooters to a design that seems to promise the ultimate compromise: the Smith & Wesson Model 69 Combat Magnum. Historically, carrying a .44 Magnum meant strapping a massive, heavy end frame to your chest, or risking the wrist, snapping recoil of an ultra-light scandium frame. Smith & Wesson attempted to split the difference by chambering this powerhouse cartridge in their medium-sized L frame. The result is a 5-shot revolver with a 2.75-inch barrel that weighs just over 34 ounces. On paper, it looks like the ultimate backcountry companion. But on the range, this middle ground design reveals why compromises can sometimes leave you with the worst of both worlds. The primary issue is that the L frame simply lacks the physical mass to tame the violent energy of a .44 Magnum. Firing full, power 240-grain soft-point ammunition feels incredibly sharp, driving the grip panel straight into the web of your hand and causing significant muzzle rise. In my testing, after running 1,200 rounds through the cylinder, the lockup remained tight, but the physical fatigue made accurate follow-up shots incredibly difficult. Furthermore, to fit the larger cylinder into the medium frame, Smith & Wesson had to flat-cut the bottom of the forcing cone. This design choice has left many high-volume shooters worried about long-term durability under a steady diet of heavy Magnum loads. When you compare the Model 69 to the classic N-frame Model 629, the trade-offs become hard to justify. The 629 gives you a full 6-round capacity and a heavier frame that actually helps absorb recoil, making it much easier to shoot accurately. With a manufacturer-suggested retail price of $1,100 and a street price hovering around $950, buyers in 2026 are walking past the Model 69. They are choosing either the shootability of a traditional N-frame or transitioning entirely to modern 10mm semi-automatics for their backcountry defense. At the end of the day, the market in 2026 has no room for compromises that hurt. Shooters are walking away from these .44 Magnums because they value fast, controllable hits over nostalgia or marketing hype. With modern 10mm semi-automatics offering higher capacity and manageable recoil, an overpriced, painful, or high-maintenance wheel gun is a tough sell. If you are going to carry a heavy-caliber handgun for defense, it needs to be a tool you actually enjoy shooting, not one you dread pulling the trigger on. Choose the gun that keeps you fast on target.